Hello and welcome to this second focus group meeting for our Prelim 3 project. It's very exciting to be at this point in the project where we are going to show you and demonstrate a little bit of new information about the project and tell you a bit more about how you can get involved and help us deliver. So give me a moment. I'm going to share my screen and get this presentation started. So hopefully you can all see that. And well, I'm just going to do a fairly brief introduction and then hand over to Erica, who's our main trainer and resource design development coordinator. But I'm just going to say a few words, and really the main thing I want to start off by saying is that if you were involved in Prelim 1 and Prelim 2, you probably already noticed that this project is completely different. So on the last projects, there was a lot of involvement. There was kind of courses that you were getting training and input on. But this is a different kind of project. And just to reiterate that this is about resource development. So as it says here in point 2, we are hoping to deliver a teaching resource package that is designed to be sustainable. So in other words, it's not just going to be for you guys who are involved in the project at this point. We really hope it's something which can get disseminated and used by as many teachers as possible in Angola. So in other words, beyond the project, as beyond the end point of the project. Our focus for the resource package is going to be for the secondary school in Angola, years 10, 11 and 12. And the sort of explicit description or definition of the resource package, as it says here in point 4, it needs to be a range of easily disseminated, context appropriate resources and activities designed specifically for association members. So in other words, it's going to be as relevant as possible for you and your students in your context, in your classrooms, and easily disseminated. So in other words, hopefully it's going to be quite easy for us to share and spread out and give access to as many people as possible. Okay, I think that's the main bit from me, apart from just clarifying the roles of people involved. So as you might imagine, the role of ANELTA is to help share the local knowledge and expertise about the context in Angola, and also to share the coordinating of the project. Our role in St. Giles, we're mainly involved in designing and developing the resource package, as well as coordinating. And your role, we hope, is to take the resources we've developed so far and to trial them with your students. So it's really important now that you, if you can, find a time and a way to introduce them into your classes, use them with your students, and then really important is give us some feedback. Yeah, tell us what's worked and tell us the kind of response that your students have, and how do you feel about using them as well. So trialing the resources, giving us feedback, and then a bit later on in the package, we hope you can help us to share the resource package with other teachers in your regions. Right, that's enough from me. So I'm going to finish there and hand over for the next part of the presentation to Erica. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the resource package and show you some of the materials. Okay. So the first thing about the resource package is to look at what our priorities are in creating this package for Angola. Okay. So we'd really like the resource to be as practical as possible. So that means that it should be able to be used by teachers teaching big classes and working with a range of ages, and also that it's practical in terms of not needing special technology and not needing particular equipment in order to use it and get the most out of it. We also want it to be motivating for both the teacher and the students, of course. And we'd like it to be communicative so that it promotes a communicative approach to teaching, keeping your students involved and engaged throughout your lessons. We also are thinking about linking to your Angolan syllabus so that it naturally fits in with everything else that you're doing with your students. And to make sure that it's appropriate to Angola and to your students. And of course, we also want it to be supportive to the teacher, and that's regardless of whether the teacher has lots of experience and qualifications or if they don't, because we'd like teachers to be able to make good use of the materials, even if they haven't had a lot of access to teacher training opportunities in the past. So the resource basically has three main areas, okay? So the first is lesson materials, and these are little lesson plans with materials for lessons, and that's either speaking or speaking and listening lessons or grammar lessons, and those grammar lessons are the ones from your syllabus. We also have included a set of games and activities because we know how useful those are for all teachers. And the third area is that we've included teaching techniques videos, and these focus on some core teaching techniques which really help to promote a communicative approach. So you probably have some questions in your minds about this. So I'm going to answer these three key questions, and then we can also answer more questions that you have at the end. Okay. So the first thing is you're probably thinking, how are you going to get these materials? So basically, we've uploaded all of these materials so far to a web page on a program called Padlet. It's a nice platform where you can post documents and links. So I'll put the link to that in WhatsApp after this meeting, and you'll be able to see all of the materials there. This is what it looks like on a mobile phone, but I'll just show you what it looks like on a computer screen so that you can see all of those materials. Okay, so here is the Prelim 3 Padlet platform, and we'll put in a recording from this meeting on Monday for you. And then you'll see we've got the games and activities, and then we've got the teaching techniques videos where you can click and watch some of our teachers. And we've got the lesson plans for the third term, for term 3, between April and June. Okay. All right. So let's look a bit more in detail at just some of these materials for a moment. And that's basically to help you work out what do you need to know about the design of these materials in order to use them effectively. So first, when it comes to the grammar lessons, you'll see that every lesson document has a reference to the year group and the term that you might want to use it. But that is a little bit flexible. I know that some of you might be working slightly differently or have a class that doesn't quite fit into the typical year 10, but please do make use of those materials anyway with your other classes, whichever class it feels most relevant to for you. So it also gives you the focus of the lesson, whether it's grammar or skills, and it'll give you the length of the lesson. And all lessons are 45 minutes because we know that's your shortest lesson length. Okay. And we do have suggestions on how to extend that lesson for those of you who have 90-minute lessons as well. I'll show you that later. So all the lessons have clear aims and a couple of sentences that just tell you what's the idea of this lesson. So if you look at that box, you'll be able to tell what is this lesson all about quite quickly. So then with the speaking or the listening and speaking lessons, again, you've got a similar document that outlines the lesson. I just wanted to talk for a minute about the listening lessons. So we've based our listening lessons on the idea of a live listening, where the teacher is the audio. So you might have a different term that you use for this. So I just wanted to explain what we mean when we say it's a live listening. Okay. So essentially with a live listening, the teacher prepares a short anecdote, a little story, and then in class they tell the students the story, just like they're talking with a friend and telling this story to their friend. And the students listen and they answer some questions whilst they're listening to your story. So it's a really great way to provide valuable listening practice without needing any equipment at all, okay? But it does rely on the teacher, all right? So we've recorded an example which we think could help support you. And you can use that in different ways. So you could use it as just inspiration. You listen to that story and you think, okay, and then you create your own and then you tell it in the class. Or you could use it and you retell that story in the class. So you're taking our story and making it your own. And the other way that you can use it, potentially, is if you do have listening equipment in your classroom, I know some of you might have, then you could press play and the students could listen. So it's quite flexible in terms of how you can use it. So the next part of the package is games and activities. And some of these games focus more on reviewing grammar and vocabulary from the syllabus in a communicative, fun way. And other games focus more on speaking fluency and really getting your students making little sentences and longer stretches of speech. And the key idea behind them is about making learning as fun and as memorable and as motivating as possible. So I hope you'll really enjoy those activities. And you can use them at any point during the syllabus, really. So, have a look through and you can pick, oh, this week I'm going to try this one with my class. So for all of those materials, you'll see that sometimes there are opportunities where we've said you can personalize it. So you can make it a bit more specific to your students. Other times we've made suggestions on how to make it easier or how to make it harder, because we know from experience that one class is not like another class, right? So every class is a little bit different, and you might need to make it a little bit easier for your students or a little bit harder for your students to differentiate. And another thing that you'll see is about how to extend these lessons. So you have a 45-minute lesson plan, but you'll also see there are suggestions for how to review that vocabulary or grammar next lesson, or how to extend the lesson perhaps with homework, or extend it so that it could be a 90-minute lesson. So that should support those of you who've got a bit more time with your students. So another thing you'll see in all of these materials is that we've got pictures of the board, because it's sometimes so much clearer than trying to explain what we mean, okay? So hopefully that'll be clear for you and a good reference when you're looking through a lesson plan. So the last part of that resource is the teaching techniques videos. And these really focus on reviewing some of the core teaching techniques that underpin a communicative approach. And we know how useful it is to observe colleagues in class, right? I've had the opportunity to observe many of my colleagues, and every time I do, I pick up something new that I could steal and use with my own students too. So I hope that these videos will be a little bit like that, like watching a colleague in a classroom and stealing from them. So each video has a short explanation of the techniques that we're suggesting, and a little video clip of one of my colleagues in London or in Brighton teaching using this technique with their class. Of course, our classrooms are different from your classrooms, and we understand that and we know that clearly. But hopefully you'll find that these techniques are techniques that are useful with all classes, and usable regardless of how much technology or equipment you have in your room. So I hope that you'll see how useful they are in delivering real quality teaching, and that they'll be relevant to you. So finally, you're probably thinking, how can I leave this feedback? And Josh mentioned earlier how important the feedback is to us. And I just wanted to make that point again, that without your feedback, we continue producing materials. We don't know if they're appropriate or right for your students or not. But with your feedback, we can really revisit these materials, make them better, make them clearer, and make them more relevant to Angola and your teaching context. And we can do that before we share this material with all the other secondary school teachers in Angola. So thinking about feedback, you can do that. Every lesson plan or activity has a box where you can see a link that you can click on to leave feedback, or a code to scan if you prefer. And the feedback will look like all of the questionnaires that I've sent to you so far, where you use multiple choice, mostly multiple choice, but then sometimes there's an opportunity for you to add a comment of your own, and that's really useful for us, so please do. And there are many other ways that you can also leave us feedback. So one way, for example, is to leave us a voice message in WhatsApp. You can say, oh, hi, Erica, today I tried this lesson. My students really liked the practice part, for example. I was a bit confused about this instruction in the lesson plan. Maybe you can make it clearer. Okay, so just to really help us make it as good as we can. And because we're not there in Angola with you, we can't see these lessons being used in your classroom, but you can give us a window into your classroom by showing us photographs of your blackboard, photographs of your students' work, maybe even recording your student doing one of the speaking tasks from the speaking lesson, or recording yourself doing one of the live listening stories. And we would also really love to see any videos of you in class teaching. So maybe if you've watched some of the teaching technique videos, you can then say, okay, I'm going to film myself doing a little bit of setting up a task or getting feedback on a task. And then we can see how you're implementing the things from the resource package. So looking ahead, it might be useful for you to see the overview of where we're going in the future. So in terms of the future, from now until June, the idea is that you guys trial this resource package with your students. So you take the lesson plans, you go and try it with your students, you give us feedback, you take the games, do the same, you watch the videos, you give us feedback. And all of that feedback will help us to improve the resources. So we'll continue working on the resources. And it'll also help us when we're thinking about creating more materials for term 1 as well. And then we'll have the summer holiday, so you guys will relax. And then from September until November, we're hoping to have one workshop in every region of Angola. So this is so that we can get this resource package out to secondary school teachers, local secondary school teachers in your area. And we know from experience that the best way for teachers to learn about a new resource is for someone who has used it and understands it to tell them about it and show it to them directly. So we're really hoping that some of you will be able to help lead these workshops in your region. So if you've never led a workshop before, don't panic, okay? We're planning in September to provide some training so that you feel you can really do it, okay? But it'll be a really wonderful opportunity for you to share your tips on how to use this resource package with the other teachers that work in your region. So we're really hoping that you'll be keen to participate at that stage. So that's the end of the presentation for today. So I'm going to take a deep breath and yeah, let's have some questions. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about the project and about the resources so far.